This is Cheng Kah Kit, student ID 26039680, recording for task 2 of assignment 1 for PSY1011 Introduction to Psychology 1A. The purpose of this recording is to give a brief summary of what one of my sources is about. The topic that I've chosen is titled, Does Exposure to Media Violence Increase an Individual's Likelihood of Engaging in Violent Behavior? As I was mentioning, the source I'll be using is titled The Impact of Electronic Media, Violence, Scientific Theory and Research, authored by L. Rowell Huseman, published in 2007 in the Journal of Adolescent Health, Volume 41. As you may have guessed, the reason why I chose this source is because it is important to my literature review. It gives a good background on what media violence actually is, and it also explains both the short-term and long-term effects of media violence on individuals like us. Now, next, onto the background of media violence. As we all know, in the 20th to 21st century, the advancement of technology has since changed the environment and culture around us. Mass media, internet, television, and video games has played a fundamental role in how we run our daily lives. Research over the past half-century has pointed out that exposure to violence in media increases the likelihood of an individual to emit aggressive or violent behavior. These new forms of media has allowed youth to be prone to bullying. For example, internet bullying. Besides that, this big advancement of media has left youth vulnerable to badly influence even at home, which could mean that youth not only get bad influence out on the streets, but even then, at home, they're influenced to bad influence at home. Now, next, I'll be talking on the effects of media violence. Among the short-term effects is that most theorists believe that exposure to media violence is simply due to priming processes, arousal processes, and immediate mimicking of specific behaviors, which I'll explain all of them shortly. Priming is a process where an implicit memory effect in which exposure to one stimulus influences a cognition. For example, in a media representation, when the gun is pointed, you be linked to a concept of violence to the viewer. Additionally, stimulus can be something neutral, such as an ethnic group like Middle Easterns, associating it with a stereotype or belief or behavior. For example, Middle Easterns are usually stereotyped with terrorism. Now on to the next effect, which is arousal. In an event where in the media representation, the viewer is somehow aroused, aggressive behaviors might occur due to excitation transfer and general arousal. Exposure to stimulus can arouse emotion leading to aggressive behaviors. For example, in a media representation, if provocation is used, it will probably invoke anger in the viewer. And at the same time, this could be dangerous as well. As well as the provocation used in the media representation does not necessarily mean the emotion anger. Next, on the next effect is mimicry. Mimicry, it's simply put, is the imitation of specific behavior occurring. It is common in children where they imitate exactly what they observe. Therefore, if they observe media violence, they are likely to produce violent behaviors as well. Next, I will talk about the long-term effects. The first long-term effect would be observational learning. Observational learning is pretty much a guideline to develop appropriate behaviors, beliefs, as well as schemas about the world for individuals. As well as through observation, we adopt these behaviors, beliefs as to how we shape ourselves and approach the world. The use of media violence has since bias on how we see the world, bias our behaviors and approaches, and would then lead to us seeing the world in a violent manner, thus leading to violent behaviors. The next point is desensitization. Prolonged exposure of media can simply cultivate habits of our natural responses. For example, a media representation of excitement might simply make our hearts beat faster, laugh, or simply smile. The exposure to media violence causes negative emotions within us to invoke naturally. Through prolonged exposure, we then tend to invoke violent behavior without experiencing negative emotions. And that is it, everyone. Thank you for your time. This is the end of my recording.